Hi, this is Eddie Payne in South Carolina. I'm a first year administrator and left the business world 5 years ago to join the world of public education and have loved every moment and not regretted a single second. A couple of crucial lessons that I have learned is the need for resilience and adaptability. I think this podcast offers many opportunities and anecdotes for principals to be able to be flexible and to understand what they need to do. I walk about 5 miles a day in our building, and if you cannot be resilient and adaptable, then it is obviously quite challenging. Also, I think your podcast is very insightful and inspiring. Thank you so much, and keep up the good work.
Principal Matters podcast. Can you believe it? 400. Hi, friends. This is
400.
Will Parker and Jen Schwanke from Principal Matters, the School Leaders podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. Oh my gosh, Jen Schwanke. This is a special episode because we're just going to pause in this episode and think back and have a little fun and think forward. But Principal Matters listeners, if you are a first-time listener, then go back and listen to some archive shows so you can figure out why Jen Schwanke and I are talking about all the things we're talking about today. But Jen Schwanke, welcome back to Principal Matters podcast. This episode will come out in the middle of June middle of June, probably about the same time that everybody's wrapped up school or maybe heading to summer conferences or maybe getting ready to do vacation. But how are you? How's life as you're stepping into this next season?
It's great. It's really good. Yeah, a lot going on. I like you, I cannot believe we're here with episode 400. We were trying to remember when you and I first talked. I'm feeling like I'm going to look, but I'm feeling like it was episode 140 or 150 or something.
Yeah, I think it was around there. So let me give some crazy background for anyone that wants to geek out with me, because sometimes it's helpful for me to set some context. But in February of 2013, I started this website by just writing a weekly post for leaders. That continued until 2015 when I decided, hey, how about a podcast? And so I started doing an audio version of the blog. And so December 23rd of 2015, so you can tell while I was doing over Christmas break, figuring out how to podcast. And then I actually, for that first year, and this is, again, I'm just geeking out, I actually did them in tandem. I wrote a blog post and I did a podcast back and forth each week. And then I finally realized, oh, this is killing me. And so how about I just do one post a week again, and it will be a podcast, and I'll make sure it has the notes that I would place in there for that. So by the time I got to my 100th episode, it was June 31st, 2018. I had met you by then. I did a update for the 100th on the power of storytelling, and just to tell some funny stories about when I was a kid. I used to have a tape recorder, and I would just sit there and record radio shows where I would be the weather guy and the news guy and the commercials and the music. And that memory like came back to me. So at some point when I was podcasting, I was like, oh my gosh, it's come full circle. And then you and I started recording, Jen, and I did a quick search today on my website where I can just look up specific word searches. And so I put in Jen Schwanke on my website, and it pulled up 114 posts. I have either referenced you or interviewed you so many times that it's a huge part of the content of Principal Matters. So thank you for all of the time that you've given to make this podcast what it is. And then in 2020, we celebrated the 200th together by looking back at that episode. This was June 25th, 2020, looking back at the distance learning we just come through with COVID. Can you remember that? That was nuts.
That was nuts. Yes, it was. It feels like yesterday and like a generation ago, both.
It does. It almost gives me like PTSD just to think about it.
Right.
And then in 2022, my good friend, Dr. Jeff Springer, who loves to listen to our show, and he's been on several times, he reached out and asked, can I interview you for the 300th? And he did such a wonderful job of just kind of walking back the memory lane with so many posts. So Principal Matters listeners, if you love to go back into the history of shows, you can go back and look up those episodes 100 and 200, 300 and hear all that.
William G. Parker and Jen Schwanke, congratulations on 400 episodes of your podcast. My name is Josh Fine, and I am a principal from Maryland and the incoming president of the Maryland Association for Elementary School Principals. And your podcast provides me so much joy and peace and knowledge. I love listening to it on a quiet ride back from work in the evening. Just hearing your calm voices and sage wisdom lets me know that I'm not alone in this work. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do, and here's to 400 more.
Jen, we kind of wanted to have fun with this one.
We did.
It just do something a little bit different instead of walking down memory lane too much. Here, I'll set the stage by just admitting that we were brainstorming. What is something we could do to like ask each other really fun questions that would require you and I to do like speed rounds, like one sentence answers, because neither one of us can answer a question quickly. And so we actually decided, let's use AI. So we jumped on ChatGPT and had it find lighthearted questions for educators. And so we have 10 questions, just full disclosure, that we didn't write. Some bot wrote these questions, but we're going to take turns answering these questions with one sentence answers. And Jen, you want to set the stage for anything else?
Yeah, I think it's important our listeners know, first of all, we have not rehearsed them. I have not even read them. I don't think you have either. We just skimmed them. We popped it into Chat GPT and we just asked them. Now, full disclosure too, to the listeners, you want to be very grateful that you aren't subject to my idea, which was 400 tips or 400 quick one-word answers, because as Will did the math, that's 4.5 seconds per question and answer. So you would be like, I don't know, drinking from a fire hose trying to follow along. So we're not doing that. My dream of 400 somethings would keep you here for like hours. So we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
We would probably lose some listeners if we tried. I mean, somebody might be able to endure that.
Right.
Yeah, I do have some friends that listen to this podcast while running. And so if they can't reach their phone, maybe they can,
right.
They would be stuck on these questions. Okay. So we haven't rehearsed these. Not even exactly sure how we should start, except how about I just ask the question and then you respond and then I'll respond.
Okay.
You want to try that? So here's question one.
Okay.
What would be the theme song of your classroom, Jen, when you were teaching?
My first instinct is the Danger Zone song from Top Gun. My second would be Philip Phillips with Home. If you don't know that song, look that up. I would hope that would be my theme song.
Oh, okay. Well, you did two. So I'm going to do two.
See, this is why we can't do 400 of anything.
So
because
I'll do two. I'll say, because these two have been on my mind lately, I'll say Better Together with Jack Johnson. And Chariots of Fire, because I just love that theme song. And I used to have to teach writing. So sometimes we'd listen to the soundtrack when we were in writing moments. Okay, question two.
Okay, see, I want to tell a story about Chariots of Fire, but I'm not going to. No, I'm not, because I'm being disciplined today, Will, because this is our 400th episode and we're being disciplined. So I'm asking you a question. Are you ready?
Go.
If you could take your class on a field trip anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Gosh, anywhere in the world. It would be Washington, D.C. It's just such a beautiful, wonderful, historic place with all the Smithsonian museums and so many free things to do. But man, you talk about like every street is a lesson. That's where I would go. Right. If you could take your class on a field trip anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I think I would do, since I can't do DC, I would do Boston. Oh, nice. And Boston's such, so rich in history. And really that's where the first ideas of public schools around that New England area, where it all began. So I'd want to dig into that.
Yeah. And they have this really cool, I think it's called the Liberty Trail, which is sidewalks marked in red brick all the way through the city and down to the harbor. And so I love that. All right. Question three. What's the most unexpected thing that has happened during your teaching career?
Becoming a principal. I say that because I was about year 3 or 4 and people would say to me, "Are you going to be a principal someday?" I'd be like, "My gosh, no. Are you kidding me?" And here we are. So,
I'm just gonna be honest. This was not me, but it was one of my teaching friends the first time a teacher caught a couple in a bathroom stalled together, I was like, oh, I didn't even think this was a possibility in my job description.
right, right. I didn't expect
that
that
would be
at
a part of
all.
what could happen.
Right.
Okay, you ask the next question.
Okay. If you weren't a teacher, what would you have done?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna, again, I'll be transparent. I really thought when I was finishing college, even though I was an education major, that I would go into some kind of church ministry or missions work or something. I was really involved in our church and had taken some trips during college overseas. And I just thought, man, I would love to be able to do something like this full time. And, but thankfully, I realized teaching is a calling. What about you?
If I hadn't gone the teaching route, this is tricky. I would have liked to do something with animals, with horses. I would have wanted to be a writer. I would have wanted to open a little cafe and be a restaurateur. I would have wanted to be some sort of an exercise physiologist. See, I still have big dreams. I can't possibly be 50 because I still have a lot of things to do.
Yeah, do them all.
Yeah, do
All
them
right.
all, right?
Hello, Principal Matters listeners. My name is Russell Tillery, and I'm the principal of Salisaw High School in Salisaw, Oklahoma. I'm a longtime listener of Principal Matters and consider Will a personal friend. There are so many things I appreciate about the show. Principal Matters is a resource for aspiring leaders, new leaders, and veteran leaders. The wisdom compiled in one location from leaders around the world is vast. I also appreciate the positivity and encouragement. I can listen to the show and connect with others who are facing similar challenges. Finally, I always find new and innovative ideas I can adapt to our school that will benefit our students and staff members. Will and Jen, keep up the great work. You complement each other and make this show both educational and entertaining. Thank you.
Next question. What's your secret talent that your students don't know about?
I can write backwards in cursive.
What? No way.
I know. My mom and I used to sit at the kitchen table when I was a little girl and I would copy her cursive. And then one day she wrote my name backwards. I can still see it, Jenny, backwards and in cursive. And then I practiced it. And that kind of doodling is what got me through high school chemistry. But
Okay,
yeah,
Principal
I
Matters
can.
listeners. Yeah. So if you want a bonus video of Jen writing cursive backwards, then email her at jen@jenschwanke.com and she can set up a special meeting.
I can. I'll set the camera on a whiteboard and I'll write cursive and backwards. Yes. It's
my
an
gosh.
absolutely useless talent. Trust me, especially because people can't read cursive forwards anymore, which again is fine. That's evolution. But that is my talent. I will
When
take
Missy and
through.
I were going through financial planning for our will, because we're at that age now, the guy that was helping us work through it, he was writing upside down for us on paper.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's pretty impressive.
Talent. Yeah.
Okay. So
your secret talent.
So my secret talent, I usually saved this until the very last day of school when I was teaching, and I would bring my guitar to school because my kids didn't know I sang. And I would usually, and we finished the last day together. And of course, I was secondary, so I had 6 or 7 periods, depending on what year. And so usually right before they would leave for summer break, I would say, hey, I just wanted to give you a song as you headed to summer break, and I'd sing a song or two for them. And they would all freak out because they had no idea, which probably was something I should have shared with them before. But that was my secret talent.
That's what I was going to say. It's too bad you waited. I understand why you did. It was a big splash, but maybe October.
If just think how much more learning could have happened if I could have made them sing every day with me.
Exactly.
Okay. What's the next question?
Is it my turn?
I think so.
If you could have a mascot for your classroom, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, this is gonna sound so ridiculous.
What are you gonna say? Like a chia pet? What's ridiculous?
No, okay. Oh my gosh, this is also a story. I don't know if I should tell this, but I'm gonna. It would be a pet dog named Bart, and there's a specific reason for this, and this is because back in the 90s, we had this pet dog that my grandparents fell in love with, and it was this tiny little terrier, and it died. And my grandparents were so distraught, they went to the taxidermist and had it stuffed. And it sits in my mom and dad's house. And it is this crazy story piece that when someone comes to visit from out of state and they have to see that dog, it's a really freaky moment. So my brother now keeps it hidden away in a closet because it's just too uncomfortable for people. But I don't know. That was also a story I would not tell kids till the very end of the year, and they would all freak out. So I would probably have to have that dog in my classroom if I had a mascot because of how weirded out all my
Right.
students. Yeah. See, Jen, you didn't know these stories
I
are going
didn't.
to take us this way.
No, I didn't. And I was actually thinking of this in the wrong way because when you said mascot, I was thinking, well, I would have it be a cat, but I was not thinking that. I wanted a cat to be a live animal in my classroom because I think
Oh,
cats
now that
calm
would be
people.
cool. Mhm.
But that's not the question that is on the table. The question is what mascot. And so I think, to go with any sort of animal that inspires power and energy and passion. So I would think a tiger or an elephant or a horse, something big and formidable, but also gentle.
Yeah. Well, I know how much you love horses, so I could see that.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, next question. What fictional character would you pick as a co-teacher?
Atticus Finch. Atticus Finch. I can't even believe this is so obvious to me. Atticus Finch, I want his wisdom and his calm and his understanding of children as a
Mm.
co-teacher. He would be a great co-teacher.
Oh my gosh, this is such a great question. As a co-teacher,
Every
a
day,
fictional
sharing your
character
classroom every
every
day.
single day.
Yep,
I
who's-
want to say one of my favorite characters, but I'm not sure if we could tolerate each other. I'm going to say Gandalf
Okay.
from Lord of the Rings, because it would just be so amazing to have his prowess in my classroom. But I guarantee after a few days he would tire of me. And so,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, maybe, but you could, if you're in our fictional classrooms, they're right next door. And so when Gandalf really made you anxious or upset, come on over and Atticus and I we'll calm you down. It'll be okay.
Okay, next question. What's your favorite educational meme?
I know this one. Listeners, I promise I have not rehearsed these. I'm reading them as you're reading them. My favorite meme is the one that makes fun of principals that says, just endured another meeting that could have been an email. And here's why. Because I actually think about that when I set up meetings. I'm like, does this need to be a meeting or does it need to be an email? Am I going to be the subject of a meme? I don't want to be. And if I am, then I need to just send the email. So that's my favorite one because it helps me.
Oh, I think, is this a meme? I have to just quote Rita Pearson when she said that students can't learn from people they don't like.
Right.
And I'm just like, sometimes that's just true. Like it or not, if
Right.
you are Mr. or Mrs. Grumpy every single day, don't expect kids to feel very warm.
Right.
Being in your classroom.
This is Tomas Macaluso from Reno, Nevada. One of the things I love about Principal Matters the most is that it gives me an opportunity to hear from colleagues from all over and really take into consideration the things they're working on, the things they're talking about, the perspectives they have, and all of that goes in to help feed me and my hunger to grow and to become better and to become more of a dynamic leader. And Principal Matters has definitely helped make that a reality. So thanks, Will, for all of the hard work.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classrooms every day for one reason. They love it. Why? IXL is where the magic happens. With just one platform, teachers can personalize learning for every student. IXL gives teachers all the tools they need to enhance and differentiate instruction without adding work to their plates. Plus, IXL has decades of expertise and is proven to be effective. Studies on more than 70,000 schools across 45 states show that those who use IXL outperform others on state tests. Ready to bring the magic to your school? Visit ixl.com/PM to learn more.
Okay, number 9. If you could invent a new school subject, what would it be?
If I could invent a new school subject, what would it be? This sounds so self-serving, but I would want to do it. I think I would want to create a class on content creation, like how you could create and market using content. Because I just think that there's so much I've learned in the whole process of writing and website design and podcasting and all that. And I'm like, wow, if I could figure this out at my age, imagine what kids could do with this kind of knowledge.
Right. Right. I'm going to go completely in a different direction, and I would say gardening.
Oh,
I feel like we're losing a huge connection to our earth and how we eat and how we feed each other, how we feed one another. So that would be mine. Everybody needs to learn to garden.
I
And
love that.
now is it my turn or yours?
I think it's your turn.
We could not have done 400 things because we can barely do 10.
Uh-huh.
Okay. My final question. What's the most bizarre question a student has ever asked you?
Okay. I don't know if this was a question as much as it was an aha moment, but I grew up in West Tennessee. I have to set the story up. So, the way that I pronounce words now is not how I used to pronounce words because I've been away from home for so long. Although when I'm back home, my Tennessee accent comes out really thick. But when I was teaching, I remember there was this passage we would cover in grammar, and the word motorcycle was in there. And my kids would always stop and say, "Why do you say it that way?" And I would say, "What do I say what that way?" And they would say that word, and they would say motorcycle. And I could not hear the difference in the way I was saying it and the way they were saying it. So they finally came up, one of my students, and they wrote it on the board. I was pronouncing it motorcycle. And they were like, "You put an extra R in the word motorcycle. So why do you say motorcycle?" And I had to learn how to pronounce motorcycle. And I still have to say it really, really slowly.
You have to make sure you get all the sounds in. The most bizarre question, this isn't actually bizarre, but it is. I'm going to be speaking to all the ladies out there. I think we've all been asked this, especially if we work at the elementary level. But the question is, you get a side hug from a kiddo in the morning and they say, "Are you going to have a baby?" And, there's only one of two answers. One is, "Yes, I am," which would apply to very few of us. And then the other answer is, "No, I am not going to have a baby right now or in the next 9 months. But thanks for making me feel great about myself."
Oh, I
So
love
yes,
that.
we all of us females have gotten that every now and then. And usually, especially the younger elementaries, it's if, mom has had a baby recently or they know someone who has. And so they're looking for that. But
Oh, I
it
love
is a
that.
little bit humbling. It does remind me of the time a student, I had gotten my hair cut and highlighted, and I felt sassy. I felt young and trendy and stylish. And this student came up to me, and he had autism, and he was one of my favorite students. And he said, "Oh, Miss Moorfield," my name at the time, "you just look so old with that haircut." And so that was humbling as well. They'll say what they want to say,
They
right?
say exactly what they think. There is no humility left. All
Okay, so
right.
this
Oh,
was fun. Here's my idea. And
mhm.
listeners, Will has no idea that am about to say this. Let's go to our chat GPT and go to the additional questions.
Uh-huh.
And there's 10 there, Will. You get to pick one for me, and I'm going to pick one for you. Just
Okay.
randomly. And again, this
Okay.
is in a different window, so we have not
Yeah.
rehearsed this.
Okay, well, we'll do this, and then I'm going to change gears on you and
Okay.
surprise you. So, okay, so you want me just to pick one of the additional questions for you?
Yep.
Okay. And these are more like, some of these are more serious
Mhm.
questions. So, how do you encourage parents in supporting their children's learning?
How do I encourage parents to support their children's learning? Well, this is a huge question. This could be a whole
Mhm.
episode.
Uh-huh.
I think it's about building trust. So they trust you enough to get out of your way. Supporting their child's learning doesn't mean, "Here's a stack of worksheets, please do this with them at home." I think it's talk positively about school, um, understand the teacher's intentions, um, encourage your child to make good choices, and prioritize school, not by forcing it or getting in the middle of it, but by fostering that relationship between child and teacher.
Mhm.
That's what I would
Good
say.
answer.
Okay, ask me. Oh, no, now I ask you. How do you encourage ethical behavior in students?
Wow. And these have to be short answers. Okay. I would say, first of all, you model ethical behavior. So important for me, especially at the beginning of a school year, to be the first to make the first move in terms of establishing with students that rapport, that welcome, inviting them into learning, expressing what a value it is to have them, and what a treasure and a gift it is to be able to teach them, and lead them. And then so that the discussion around behavior can become something that we can model, but also we can then invite. And one of the things I used to do in the classroom, Jen, was I would invite students to help me set norms on the ways that we would behave with each other. And I love that, because when you invite them to set the norms for behavior, they almost always end up in the same place, because at the end of the day, they want to be treated like other people, like they want to treat other people. It's just really a beautiful way to just kind of be reminded that this is when we can treat each other with respect and dignity, then we're going to get a whole lot more done.
My name is Brent Klein, principal at Palo Alto High School in Palo Alto, California. One of the favorite days of the week for me are Wednesday mornings when I jump into my car knowing that there's a new episode of Principal Matters waiting to be listened to. I can't tell you how often those conversations that I hear with Will and with Jen Schwanke, how much they relate to the experiences and to the issues that I'm dealing with at that particular time. Thank you, Will, for your encouragement, your inspiration through your podcast, and as well as with the time that you spend with the Pally administrative team in our mastermind sessions and with my coaching sessions that I get to do with you every so often. Most importantly, I love your stories, Will. It's almost like I'm there with you, and I can't tell you how much they mean to me and the inspirational words that you have in the stories that you share with all of us. Bless you, and here's to 400 more episodes.
Okay, can I change gears now?
Change
We've
away.
asked funny questions. We've asked some serious questions. I want to pretend for a moment that I'm the listener who's spent time with Jen Schwanke and Will Parker. And we may have touched on this in some other settings, but I want to go here anyway. Jen, you are the author now of 4 great books, and I'm working on my 4th right now. And when you and I do this content together, we dive pretty deeply into our experiences as educators and school leaders. But let's talk about the nitty-gritties of our work a little bit, and specifically as writers and creators of content, because you write not just books, but you do a lot of articles for magazines. You've done work for your dissertation. You teach college classes. But talk to me about what that writing process, I'm just curious, what does that writing process look like for Jen Schwanke when you're sitting down and trying to think of the things that are on your mind? Or give us just a snapshot of what does it look like for Jen Schwanke as a content creator, as an author?
I'm going to tell you what it is, and I'm going to tell you what I think it should be.
Okay.
Because they're different. My process is I get an idea and I want to roll with it fast, right? And I want to get it all out. Where I have been so immensely blessed is I have had a fantastic acquisitions editor at ASCD who forces me, and by forces, I mean she says, this is what you need to do next. She forces the process of outlining and preparing. So when I reach out to her and I say, I have this great idea, she says, okay, it has potential, but you need to give me sample chapters. You need to detailed, massively detailed outlines. And I'm always kind of like, but I already have the idea. Just let me let it flow. But I always acquiesce, and I'm always exceedingly glad I did, because then the book kind of does write itself. It's that step in the middle, that discipline step of really outlining what you want to do. And so the reason I'm telling you this is that's not mine. That's the guidance of a good editor who has taught me a better process than my own.
That's so insightful. Thank you for saying that. And what a gift. I'm going to say my process is similar, and because I don't have an editor with whom I collaborate, and I've collaborated with editors on my other books, but usually further down the road. So I do a lot of the outlining and creating first, and then I'll reach out and for feedback if someone's interested in publishing it. And so but I'll just give you an example of what I'm working on now. And it's changed over time. In the past, I've told you this before, a lot of the content I was creating on a weekly basis for the blog and podcasts would become content that later I could take and then see the themes there so that I could use those for a book. But now that I'm doing this work full time, most of my time I'm spending training now. And so when I do a podcast, it's almost always interviewing someone else instead of me just creating all the content for it like I used to do in the past. And so I'm interviewing a lot of other people's content. So the book I'm working on right now, for instance, I'm the same as you, Jen. I can think of the concept really quickly, and my mind gets so full I don't know what to do with it. And so what I ended up doing earlier this year was sitting down and doing that myself, outlining myself. Okay, let's break this down into 20 specific chapters. And under each chapter heading, what are the things that I want to detail and say here? And then I made myself a calendar to kind of push myself like an editorial calendar would, so that each week I have to accomplish a specific, really finish a chapter, so that I can write that content out and at least keep myself on a schedule. And I can't remember who I learned this from, but because I know there's a lot of great writers out who give really good advice, but I know Anne Lamott says to be okay with shitty first drafts, and I'm just going to use an adult word here because that's what she uses. And but I heard someone else say, like, don't be afraid to throw up on the page and then clean it up later. And so that is kind of what I do. I just get it out when I'm first starting to write, and then I can go back and clean it up.
Will, Jen, almost 400 episodes. Are you kidding me? No, you're not. I know you're not, because I've listened to most of them. I'm so excited to see the longevity of your podcast, Principal Matters. You two, I take what you say, the sage advice that you offer, and I use it to think about things I've never thought about before, or consider issues in ways that I've never considered them before. I find each episode to just be an eye-opener. You know, I look at the same things every day, but you change the way that I see them. And because I see them differently, I think about them differently, that causes me to behave differently and to communicate differently. And so you're transformative. I mean, that's a big word, but I'm telling you, it's the truth. And I know that you have changed the trajectory of my professional life. I can't thank the two of you enough. I am in your debt, and you have a fan in Lisa Perry of South Dakota forever. Congrats, friends, and thank you.
What about you?
Well, and that's where I go back to my editor. Her name's Susan Hills. I've worked with her with every book, and I want to give her a shout out because whether you have a Susan or whether you have a calendar, like you said, Will, I think it's important to note how writing a book is a lot of work. People say to me a lot, "Oh, I'd like to do that." And I want to say, okay, but give away 6 months or a year of your life. Like it starts to consume you. And every thought or every idea you think, oh, does that fit in my book? So it becomes big. And so I'm going to actually use this conversation. I know we need to wrap up soon. Another thing a lot of people say to me, Will, is, oh, I'd like to start a podcast. You are one of the few that has done it and has sustained it. There's a lot of people that do a podcast for 10 or 20 episodes and then they get busy or, become overwhelmed. As someone who has not done this, who got to clip onto your wingspan and follow you along, what is it like to be the guy who is at episode 400? I mean, it's much more gigantic a task than I think even you will admit. So talk to us about that.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, Jen. Thank you. And what a great way to bring it full circle. I think that when you take on a venture like content creation, and this is something that has really been an important core value of mine, because when I made this decision all the way back in 2013 to start writing, I didn't realize it was going to become a podcast, but I've used the same philosophy for both writing and for recording. And that is that the longer you do something consistently, the more momentum you create. And so it was a book by Michael Hyatt that I read called Platform back in 2012 or 2013 that motivated me to think about, well, how do you create platforms? And he was the former president of Thomas Nelson Publishing, which is in Nashville. And he had created a really popular blog for leaders, and he still does a lot of leadership development now. But getting platform getting noticed in a noisy world, I think is what it's called. I'm not looking at it right now. But when he wrote that book, he talked about how he had researched the trends of really popular at that time blogs and websites. And what he found was exactly what you said. People will commit for a year. They might even commit for 2 or 3, but then they give up because they're not seeing the returns on their time or the feedback that they thought they would get. And so he was like, he said, I've seen most of the tipping point for a lot of writers comes about year 5. When you're really able to just keep pushing and pushing and doing consistent work and putting things out consistently. And so I just made I guess in some ways, Will's pretty simple because I just remember sitting there thinking, okay, I'm going to do this for the next 5 years. And I just made a commitment that every week I'm going to do something. I'm going to publish something, write something, share something for the next 5 years. And that's what I did. My children would say that I'm somewhere on the spectrum when it comes to like when Will decides something, he just does it. And so, but that's what's worked. And I remember, it was so funny. I went back to look at some of the posts before today's show. And when I first started publishing back in, 2013, and then as I looked at older posts, I would list at the end of each year, like places I got to speak or present. And, I remember being so excited, like when in one year I'd had like 10 or 12 different times I got to speak or present, because that's huge. I mean, in addition to leading at school, but that wouldn't have probably translated into a full-time consulting training work that I'm doing now back then, but the momentum continued and the momentum continues. So I think the momentum piece, the consistency and momentum piece is really a big part of it, Jen.
And commitment and perseverance. And I'm sure there are days you thought, I don't want to find a guest and develop the questions and write the show notes. And you just did. So in that ways, it's probably a lot like working out. You don't want to do it, but you're always glad you did.
Yeah. Well, and now you're helping. So you get a sense of what that feels like when you're setting up a conversation and when you're jumping in and getting that feedback and writing notes, because you and I both do a lot of note taking.
Hi, Will and Principal Matters podcast listeners. It's Shanita Perry from Montgomery, Alabama. I work at Baldwin Arts and Academics Magnet School. And when I tell you Principal Matters has been amazing to me and for me over the last couple of years, I think it has been. I've learned so much from Will and from the guests. I've even made some great friends. And I want to give you a shout out for your 400th episode. I was actually on the podcast on episode 321. So I am so excited and elated that you have reached 400 podcasts. And I hope and pray that you continue to reach 400 million more. Have a wonderful 400th anniversary.
I will have to give a quick shout out to a couple of people that make this show wonderful. First of all, Emily Parker Eaton, my oldest daughter, who has been editing this show for more than a year now, I believe, maybe even a year and a half. When I finally decided to practice what I preach, because I keep saying to people, what are you going to say no to if you say yes to this? And I kept realizing I was piling on all these things to do without removing anything from my list. And so it took me several days of recording samples and training to get all of that task passed off. But when this show finishes, we will take the notes, place it in a shared Google Doc. Emily will locate it. She will then do all the editing of the audio. She updates my newsletter for me, puts it on the website. Also, Aaron Fulbright, who's redesigned my website, a big shout out to him. And I don't think I've ever given credit because he doesn't really want credit and he'll be embarrassed if he knows I said this in the show. But my youngest brother is a musician. So the music that's at the front and the music I play during sponsorships and the music I play at the end is music he's written. And he's just told me, here, Will, take it. And so he's just such a talented musician. So it's a family affair, Jen, but it's been a lot of fun.
Well, and I think our first episode, Will, was episode 146.
Oh, wow.
And we were just talking about my first book, which was You're the Principal, Now What? Tips and tricks for new school leaders, or strategies for new school leaders. So we talked about that. So I think it was 146, and here we are at 400.
Yeah.
Full circle.
Well, it has been full circle. So Principal Matters listeners, I hope you've enjoyed walking down memory lane, celebrating 400 episodes. Jen, I would have put a shout out in some of the previous shows to this, asking for any listeners who wanted to send in a thought or a question or something. So we may, Emily may have been embedding those throughout the show at the beginning of the end. We'll find out, because
we trust Emily. Emily does.
We'll find out when we
Emily.
listen to the final version. But I just want to say to Principal Matters listeners, thank you for listening. If you're a regular listener, thank you for the ongoing learning that we continue to do together. And if you're someone who's been a guest on this show, thank you so much for the expertise that you shared with listeners. And if you have topics that you would love to see us discuss on this show, please reach out. Or if you are interested in being a guest, or you've got someone you'd like to recommend, you can reach out to me at will@williamdparker.com, or Jen's email at jen@jenschwanke.com. I'll just also say this, since it's June, Jen and I because we talk off the air, we know that I've been booking a lot of work, and so have you, for summer and fall, and as we step into 24-25. So if you are interested in having either one of us work with you or your leaders or your teachers on any of our books or content, please reach out. We would love the opportunity to meet you and to do some collaborating with you. And we've never had anyone do this yet, Jen, but if you want to invite both of us to come in and do some work with you, obviously, we would have to figure out how that works, because I barely can get Jen to record. She's so busy to match my schedule. But if we could figure that out, wouldn't that be fun?
I think we could.
Fun. Well, Jen, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
No, I'm just so grateful to our listeners that keep tuning in and telling their friends about us and increasing our listenership. It's been such a gift to be part of your runs or your drives or your walks with your dog, whatever. We're just honored. That's all.
Yeah. Thanks, folks, and we'll see you soon next week. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for doing what matters. We'll talk to you soon. You'll find free resources like this one at williamdparker.com. Subscribe for our free weekly newsletter, which contains bonus material, and also check out the links for Grow Academies, Masterminds, Executive Coaching, and keynote presentations from my books, as well as from Principal Matters Associates. You can find out more under our speakers tab at williamdparker.com. Thank you for learning together, and thank you for doing what matters.